All right. Excellent. We are live. Here we are. Happy Thursday, everybody. How are we doing?
Oh, good. I thought you said this next one was going to be on Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel, all that goodness. No.
It was going to be next year, I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was next year.
It's a miracle we got this all arranged back here for next week. Well, to everybody watching at home, welcome to What's Happening episode 2, where we are talking about Rise with SAP. Which is the latest kind of initiative that they have launched, business transformation as a service. So we're going to kind of dive into that from a bunch of different angles today, business, technical, kind of what it means for your manager or for your basis technician, and hopefully get you some good info there. But just to start, Brenton, Tyler, you'll be able to dive a little bit deeper, but do you have any starting thoughts to kind of get us kicked off with what is Rise with SAP?
I think that's a great question. And what was it? Because we were discussing this in the pre-show, and I think, Tyler, you probably summed it up in terms of if someone said to me, hey, explain everything to me around Rise, give me the lowdown on everything. I think what you said, Tyler, pretty much summed it up for me anyway.
I don't want to be the one that's going to get in trouble to say it, but...
Okay, I'll say it. Which is, you know what? It's okay. Let me give the diplomatic answer, which I think is still the correct one. Which is, it's an evolving concept, which is absolutely business transformation as a service. Let's bring everybody back to standard. Let's make it easier to get to S4, and let's make it easier for companies to adopt all the various components. So whether it be the service, the SI you need to engage to bring your processes back to standard, the hyperscaler, SAP, whoever else, blah, blah, blah. So it's about bringing all that stuff together, but it is something that is evolving. And we saw that even with the messaging from launch day versus 10 days later, where it had changed subtly, where I think quite a lot of us thought, oh, it's everything, including AMS, IMS, hyperscaler, SI, SAP, all in one contract. It's not quite. Your AMS is still your AMS, but it's still quite a bit of that. But to me, the exciting thing about it, if I was running an SAP landscape right now, is how do I bring everything back from hyper customized over the last 15, 20 years? How do I bring that back to a standard that I can then take forward, that I can integrate with the best of breed systems, that I can adopt some of the latest and greatest SAP technologies as an example, but also other technologies. So to me, that's probably one of the more exciting pieces. And I know that their acquisition of Signavio is a big part of that. So that's what I find exciting about it.
So that was a diplomatic way.
Hold on. There we go.
My words were, instead of Brendan using the correct words of evolving, my comment was, I don't know if anyone fully knows what exactly Rise is, including SAP. And that's not a knock on SAP. I think it's more of what Brendan said. It's an evolving thing, and they're making their way through it. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, just trying to get into this space. And from what I've understood thus far, and I'm not super deep into the technical weeds, but it sounds like this is sort of a leap from HEC, HANA Enterprise Cloud, that was tried a few years ago that may not have gone exactly how SAP was hoping. Could you guys speak more to that as I'm trying to wrap my head around it?
Yeah, I can. I'll take just kind of an initial thought on that. So, when HEC came about, this is also the time when SAP started being allowed to run on some of the public clouds of the IaaS, infrastructure as a service clouds. So you got your Google, your GCP, your AWS, Azure, Alibaba, so on and so forth. And I think what happened is the majority of the market that wanted to move to the cloud went that way. Some still went to HEC, and some, we still work with some that do as well. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it was as significant as they thought. So now SAP, after a couple of years, and I'm sure shareholders had their voice in this too, saying, "Hey, we're supposed to be cloud. What's going on?" And they said, "Well, let's not try to reinvent the wheel here. Let's jump on the train of these IaaS providers that already have this thing nailed down pretty well, and now let's find a way that we can package this together and kind of work together to make it happen." So that's kind of my initial thought on how it came to be that they were, kind of, I don't say backing away from HEC, but
And I could be wrong here, but I vaguely remember a number of years ago, long before Rise was even a thing. I vaguely remember there was an announcement that Heck was going to be moving and backed by the AWSs of this world and whatnot. So actually, you could still buy Heck as a line item on an SAP purchase order, but it would ultimately be run on one of the hyperscalers, but managed by SAP folks. I vaguely remember that transition happening. I'd say I'm thinking 2017, 2018, in around that time frame, which was a nice signal from SAP that the hyperscalers had reached the kind of maturity levels they would look for in kind of their bare metal data center implementations of Heck, that the hyperscalers could keep up with that. So I thought that was quite a nice departure. And obviously, this is then the next evolution. I suppose one of the things I see with this is it's a big ask, isn't it, to kind of for a CEO of a company to turn around and say, right, I'm going to embark on what is, let's face it, a disruptive ERP modernization project, which is going to involve disruption in our business processes. It's going to involve us having to accept across the business somebody else's definition of what best of breed looks like. And I'm not, SAP is one of the best companies in the world at developing best of breed, but it's always the 80-20 rule. It'll work for 80% of the time. The other 20% is not going to work. So I think that's to me is going to be one of the challenges, is getting businesses to want to go down this route, which is going to be hyper disruptive over the next few years, if they do it right. That would be my main concern.
And I think too, so to add on top of that, what I think is going to make that, for that person, that CEO or whomever is going to make that decision, what's going to make it even harder too is, okay, you've got now grouped everything together kind of in one bill item for SAP and everything around SAP. What about everything non-SAP? Are you going to take that with that contract? Because you can, or are you going to do it separately? And if you're going to do it separately, then why do Rise at all? Which is kind of that's the thing I'm struggling with here, is how is that going to play out?
Right. And then you're getting into the kind of the realms of, okay, so we have the SI who we've engaged as part of our contract with Rise, but now we need to buy additional or change requests or additional project resources from that SI for this component, which is non-SAP, but is dependent heavily on SAP's ability to deliver to a plan and is scheduled, and it gets messy. But I have no doubt that the folks at SAP will come up with a way around that. The other concern as well, I think I've heard as well. I had a good chat with a former colleague of mine, Chris, and he was saying one of the concerns for the SIs is some of them actually resell hyperscaler kit as part of their contracts with their customers. So if that goes away and they're only getting the services, then from a revenue recognition standpoint, even though it was passed through revenue, that's going to be quite a dent in their ARR. So that and I thought that was a great point. What are those resellers of the world going to do if customers of theirs say, hey, we're going to stick with you for the services, but we're going to SAP for everything else? That I can't imagine that's going to be a pleasant conversation for them to have. No,
yeah, completely agree. And I think that's the whole support model to that's come around with that. And you touched on this, Brenton, is fascinating to me as well. I mean, we talked about the public clouds, but also, like you said, your SI might come along or be part of this. But I mean, it's you don't, with Rise, you don't get full blown basis services. So it's kind of, you may have to find additional, if you're an organization that doesn't have,
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I'm just bringing it up.
Uh-oh.
Nope. Brenton,
we may be missing you here. May have froze up a bit. But yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, for those not watching, Brenton now looks like a Minecraft character. He's become very pixelated. We see him laughing.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a little notification saying my network is not very good, and there's actually a storm outside at the moment where I am in Ireland. So that probably will be that reason. I'll keep quiet until it improves.
Yeah, no, I think,
So,
so if you're an organization that is going to be moving to SAP and selecting Rise to do that, or if you're a small organization selecting to go to Rise and you don't have basis staff, there is going to be an open section there that you're going to have to fill still. I think there's some, I don't know if that's as transparent as people know yet. So don't just expect, there still might be some additional things you have to do off on the side. In fact, there are some of the managed service providers out there. I mean, again, there's tons of MSPs out there. Some are building models right now exactly around that. Maybe they're not going to be part of the Rise program, but they are creating go-to-market programs essentially that they will be alongside of it, kind of along on the road on the side, making sure that they can do that work and stuff. So I think that's pretty fascinating as well. As the marketing's adjusting to that as well, or the market's adjusting to that as well.
yeah, I mean, I've heard just from talking to some customers recently, there's kind of a bunch of different strategies of how people are reacting to Rise, and even some are kind of currently on ECC, planning to try to stretch that as long as they can. I mean, I'm sure SAP has kind of accounted for that, but I don't know. How do you see that playing in? I've seen, there's about 11% of the SAP base has moved to S4, so it's still got a ways to go. And from the people I've been talking to recently who are on ECC, unless there's a really burning need, they're trying to squeeze a few more years out of that. So how does that factor into this Rise with SAP play?
Yeah, I think that's exactly, I think, the market that SAP is going after is, I shouldn't say fully, but this is a key point for them, is they want to get those people off of ECC onto S4. For them, these are the people this is the part of the market they want to go after. But to your point, then, why haven't those people moved already? Is probably going to be the same reason why they're not going to move right now. So SAP is going to have to make it appealing to them. And that might mean, if you've got shelfware and stuff like that sitting off to the side, bundle that in. That might help make that decision. But again, there are some organizations that are kind of, hey, we have it working the way we want it. Don't touch it. Kind of just back away slowly.
Right.
Everything's working. And those are the people I think are going to have the hardest time to transition into this.
Yeah, totally. I know if what SAP suggested as kind of a number in terms of TCO was about 20%, 20% cost reductions for running SAP. So I'm wondering, A, where do those dollars savings come from? And B, do we think it's realistic?
So yeah, where it's coming from, I think it's where you're going to get that is the bundle, right? It's like just like when you kind of get your packages and you bundle. I mean, with SAP kind of trying to put everything under one umbrella, I'm sure they've got deals and stuff like that with all the partners, and everything that's going to be part of it to help lower those costs. And if someone was to go individually and get those services and everything independently, so I think by putting it all together, you're going to start to lower things down a bit. Will it actually happen? That I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. We've heard some stories about organizations that from the SAP, if they just do SAP on Rise, it looks good. As soon as you start to bring non-SAP components along, it skyrockets. And again, I think this is just the learning curve of SAP kind of getting into this. I think they will figure it out. But that's just what we're hearing so far. I don't know how true that is as well. So I think that's to be determined.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess I was reading it thinking there was some sort of like technical cost avoidance or something like that. It's really more of like a bundle and a discount kind of scenario.
So I believe, yeah. I'm not sure from a technical side. I don't know if there's really much that you're saving by doing Rise. I think you can kind of do it yourself if you wanted to kind of cherry pick things and have individual contracts. You could do that, but I don't know if you'd be paying list price essentially on everything compared to what maybe SAP can help bundle together.
Right. Interesting. So in like the day in, day out, from like a basis perspective or from a technical or administrative perspective or, running SAP day to day, if you can look into your crystal ball, what does operating Rise with SAP look like? Do we have any sense of that yet?
I'm not fully vetted yet in what all that's going to mean, but I'm pretty confident to say that, I mean, if people are worried, like, oh my gosh, my company's going to rise, am I going to lose my job? I don't think that's the case at all. I think that, from what we hear, the basis people are still going to be 100% necessary, still going to be there. And, so from that perspective, they're still going to be needed. Now, when it comes to like the project work, and are they able to do project work if there's an SI already in there, things like that, that's where I think it gets a little muddy, and I'm not fully sure how this is going to play out. But Brenton, I think, are you back?
I am back. I'm actually tethered to my phone now because my primary internet connection seems to have gone.
Oh, the phone, nice. Yeah. We were just talking about, so the question was, around basis people currently and moving to Rise, what does that mean for them? And I was kind of saying, well, they're still needed. So I think, I don't think this is going to be you're going to lose your job situation, but how does it change? I'm not fully sure how that's all going to evolve yet. I don't know if you have any thoughts or if you've heard anything about that yet.
I do. I don't have any insight, as in I can't say, hey, the answer is this. But what I can say is I would think of it from probably three different directions, and let's see if I can hold all three in my mind while I'm talking through them. The first one is MSP basis consultants, because I think things will change for them slightly. I think there's in-house basis consultants. And the third one has completely slipped my mind, so I'll come back to that one. But I think from an MSP basis consultant, I think things may not necessarily change in terms of your monitoring, your managing, you're doing the things you always do for your customer systems. The challenge for those folks, I think, is going to be making sure you have the right tooling in place for the journey. Because if you're inherently talking about, first of all, bringing stuff back to standard. So that means that you're going to be undoing custom changes. You're going to be potentially going brownfield, so doing a re-implementation and transferring over stuff that matches, which means you're going to be dealing with a lot of different systems, a lot of different places. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a degree of comfort that you can support that level of physical, logistical shift in your customer landscape. And I think this actually rings true for the in-house basis folks as well. Because even if SAP are coming in and doing this to you with an SI, you're still going to want to make sure everything is running the way it's supposed to be running for your business users. Yeah. So I'm not sure that things will change for them at the destination, if we ever even actually get to a destination. But I would start thinking about whether you have the visibility and the tooling in place to support the journey. And I would flip it as well into an opportunistic posture as well, which is what other platform automation changes should you be considering as part of your Rise deployment that would otherwise have been difficult if you were staying steady state the way you were. So stuff like, hey, do I want to look and see if I want to do all my deployments using Ansible? I want to use infrastructure as code. I want to do X, Y, Z. You can start to really look at some of those potential benefits from those other platforms as well as part of the Rise deployment. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
It does. It does make sense. I guess my question where it's coming from is I'm wondering is, this sounds like a big transformation for the business, but is it a big transformation for the people who operate the actual technology and who have to kind of work with it day in, day out? Does their process change at all? Does it make their life any easier? That kind of thing.
Other than you're modernizing, yes, you're right. The answer is we don't know. But I will say when you're modernizing your platforms in the way that you would if you're moving from ECC 6 to S4, immediately they become, well, I'm sure somebody would disagree with me. I was about to say they become easier to manage. I'm not sure that's the case, but they become more capable of being managed in modern ways. I suppose it's probably a better way of putting it.
And there's a bunch of, non-build but run operations things that basis people do. Mm-hmm. I think those are the things that are going to remain. So, a lot of basis people are responsible for putting in transports to help, because it's kind of acceleration of duties and things like that. So there's all of that stuff that's going to stick around. I think for me, it's going to question is, like a person that's, an enterprise basis person, enterprise going to Rise. What does that mean for project work? Are they going to be able to work on it or not? I think that's where I'm not quite sure yet. To be determined. So.
Yeah, to be determined. I'm looking forward to. I've no doubt that SAP, as they always do, already have a few customers they are doing this with right now. So that if you look back at some of the bigger launches over the years, you'd have seen them do stuff with Adidas, with Under Armour, some of those big names that they really like to trial this new stuff with. I've no doubt they have a few of those in play right now, and we'll be seeing success stories around Sapphire time. And it'll be really interesting to dig into the detail of those case studies and see how did they do it, what did they do, and then we'll be able to take a lot more away from that at that point, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the one thing I am amazed at around all of this is how fast this is moving. So typically when SAP announces something, it doesn't seem like the following day there's already people kind of interested in, well, I should say people get interested, start looking into it. But I mean, within a couple of days, we at Avantra started hearing things from customers saying, hey, or our MSP customers saying, hey,
yes,
we already have one of our customers talking about going to Rise and actually talking to SAP already. I thought, wow, that was fast. Usually it's this huge thing that SAP drops like once a year, and people kind of talk about it, and it's hot and cool for, I should say, hot topic for a little bit, and then it just kind of slowly fades. And that doesn't seem to be what's happening here so far, or maybe it's just still too early, but I just thought that was really interesting.
I've not seen too many of those discussions, but that doesn't surprise me as well, because if you take a view of where SAP are, in terms of their year, in terms of what they have to do with, as you mentioned earlier, shareholders, and what they're trying to drive the business forward, the cloud offerings and these more people onto S4, it's not really surprising that they've kind of gone, here's this new all-encompassing service thing. By the way, Salesforce, push this faster than you normally would. And I mean Salesforce, not the company. Salesforce is in their Salesforce.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now it's been raining out here in California. Now my network connection is telling me that it's not very good. So you might lose me. In which case,
I'm getting the same thing. I actually think the problem is with Bright Talk, not with us. Although I think mine one earlier may have been slightly me because, as I say, there's a storm going on here. But I actually think that we all dropped at the same time there. So I suspect it's a platform issue.
Yeah, okay. I can blame Bright Talk. That's fine.
Max, yeah. Max, we are getting questions in. Do we want to pivot to the questions?
I think that's a great idea. So the first one that came in, it says, isn't there some haziness, especially when you talk about interfaces? There's a subtle statement there which says that certified packages are going to be allowed. How can we as partners manage that? The customer is going to ask us to ensure that they have the flexibility to add on anything. I think that's a really good point.
It is. And let's face it, if you're running somebody else's system for them, the first thing you're going to want to do is control what goes in and out of that system. I completely get it. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. I can't foresee a situation where there's a flat out rejection of all third-party add-ons. You're never going to see that because the platform is by definition extensible. It is, there's certified partners all over the place. So that would be kind of shooting their partners in the foot, as it were. So I don't think we'll see that going on. I think we'll see additional scrutiny of partner implementations, of partner add-ons, which, to be quite honest with you, is no bad thing, because at the end of the day, you want your partners to be thinking of security first. You want them to be thinking about performance. You don't want to impact the performance of the overall system just because you put in some badly written analytics code, this kind of stuff. So if it results in extra scrutiny, I think that's a good thing in my view. Tyler, what do you think?
So I think in when this person said, the haziness, yeah, I think that's right, because from what we've run into some things recently around this, and from what I understand is that there's if it's like a package that you have to import like through spam, SAP is not going to allow that, or at least that's from what I understand. But if it's just coming in via like a transport and it's a namespace or something like that, they probably will allow it, because there's no way that they can monitor every single transport that's coming into your system. That in fact they wouldn't, because then why even be on SAP? Right? That's how. So I think now, but again, I think to this person's point is the verbiage around that in these contracts is very loose, and I don't think that they fully marked it down as to what exactly that means. From what I've seen in some contracts, that it's within the same contract, there's different line items that kind of contradict each other to make it that haziness. So again, I think this is going to be something too that will evolve with SAP, and I think they're trying to figure that out. Because to Brenton, to your point, do they want to piss off all their partners? And I don't know if that's what they want to do. So we'll see.
I suspect not.
Right. Yeah.
No, totally. I think, and that totally makes sense. So the next question from this list was, what will happen to the middleware? Will it be restricted to the SCP CPI, or customers will have the flexibility to choose things like MuleSoft or Dell Boomi?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't imagine any world where they would really shoot themselves in the foot by saying, you can only talk to SAP middleware and you can only talk to SAP endpoints. Especially, I was reading, we've had our own research on this, but I was reading some really interesting stuff in, my magazine, which came in the post. Thank you, ERP today. I was reading some interesting stuff in there recently, actually, and they were talking about the number of people going towards best of breed. And, this is just a trend that is increasing and increasing and increasing. The number of CIOs that want to get the best possible product to do the best possible job of a best possible process. And so that is an increasing trend. So if they turn around and said, hey, you can't integrate with or even have a middleware platform like MuleSoft as a good example, I think that I can't see that being the case. The interesting thing is going to be around the agreements for implementing that or integrating that as part of your RISE transition. Because I can't see them taking ownership over another vendor's product without some strong arming, but then maybe that's where the SIs come in. Maybe that's the additional offerings they put on the table.
I completely agree. Can you imagine if you were a customer and you're using third-party MuleSoft or what have you, and you've been using it forever and you love it, and then going to, the RISE, SAP RISE sales rep comes in and they're like, no, you can't do that. Well, that's just another reason to not go to RISE. So
exactly.
I think they'll figure this out. I think it should be available, I'd imagine. But who knows? Again, this is so new. Maybe it won't, but I'd be surprised.
No, totally. And kind of along both of these lines, and like you guys were saying a few minutes ago, they've got current customers that they're rolling this out with. I think it's Siemens and one others maybe. And they're going to kind of make sure that this stuff gets answered before it rolls out, I'm sure. To the masses. So the last thing that kind of this begs in my mind, and hopefully this doesn't stir the pot too much, but I kind of look at this and say, all right, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they've had a lot of success in this infrastructure space over the last few years with the launch of the hyperscaler clouds and all that. And on the other hand, SAP was kind of trying to get S/4HANA to more people. And now the cloud has kind of captured the attention. And in the last 18 months, we've just watched that. Everybody's talking about cloud right now. But does RISE kind of have the wow factor or the something that kind of grabs the attention like that? For whatever reason, the clouds have become very glamorous and everybody's talking about the clouds and that's like the new thing. Does RISE have the edge to kind of, compete with that? They had a very beautiful presentation when they announced RISE. I will definitely give them that. But, I don't understand the tech quite well enough to say whether it has that X factor that's going to allow it to maybe even capture some attention.
But I think that's the point then, Max, isn't it? They didn't actually announce tech. There's no tech here. This is about, hey, we have this best of breed ERP. It's called S4. We have the ability to bring you back to a standard that is manageable rather than the extended stuff that you have at the moment. And we have the means to get you then onto the latest and greatest so that you can start to innovate and integrate and to do cool things. So there is no tech. So the question actually becomes, is the prospect of rationalizing your own ERP and your processes back to a standard, is that compelling enough to push people towards S4? I'm not sure that's the case. I'm really not sure that's the case, especially in a post-COVID world. Hey, I mentioned COVID for the first time. Somebody do a buzzer. Yeah, there we go. But in a post-COVID world, you're concentrating on getting out of the gate as fast as possible. Well, depending on industry, but a lot of industries are focused on getting out of the gate. making their bets and getting back on their feet, or trying to get ahead of the competitors who maybe have not done so well. So is a modernization of your ERP top of mind? I suspect not. And if they haven't been pushed by the looming deadlines that keep getting extended for the end of life support for ECC6, or Suite on HANA, is this going to do it? I'm skeptical. Is probably my long-winded answer.
It's from a perspective of just public cloud and rising kind of the two of them against each other. I don't know if it's as compelling, because when you talk about public cloud just in general for a CIO or CEO to sit, the public clouds, let's Google, Amazon, Azure, Alibaba, whatever. The cool thing about them is they're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, obviously they want as much workloads as possible, but if they're like, yeah, you just want to give us a couple servers for now, that's great. And work in this hybrid scenario, like that's the cool thing. I think that's why adoption has been so positive with these public cloud providers. Is a lot of them don't. I mean, yeah, you're going to try to get as much as possible, but a lot of them just want to get something. With Rise, it's kind of like, well, you have to work with one of these people, and over here you got to work with one of these people. So it's a little bit more structured. And they're not bad. I mean, you're going to work with one of these top tier groups. You're going to work with one of these top tier groups, and you're going to put it on one of these top. It's all top tier stuff, but they're almost forcing you. And I think some people don't like that as well. It's like if you ever gotten married and you go to look at wedding venues, and some of them like, well, you can only use this vendor. You can only use this vendor for that.
Yes.
And some people are like, just whatever, do whatever, have fun. And I think that's why people like the Google Cloud. They like the whatever, have fun. And so I think that's the difference. But again, it's win-win for the public cloud providers, because they do it with Rise or they do it by themselves. They're getting business. So
yes, they are, and they do it well.
They certainly do. Well, I think that's a really interesting point. That was kind of where I wanted to wrap up, is kind of in the broad scope of how this all fits together with the other major players in this environment right now. But before we go, any parting thoughts about Rise, about the weather, anything else?
Well, I think I'm glad that I have two internet connections available to me, my phone and my home internet connection. And I see our nice. What did we say earlier? Cross between a Smurf and a Jedi.
Right, the Smurf and the
Jedi. No, I think Rise is interesting. It's very interesting, and it's SAP, so it will be a success. The question is the degrees to which it will be a success, and the degrees to which established ERP environments within customers will be taken through this process, especially given the current state of affairs. So I'll watch on with interest to see what happens. But it's nice to see them embarking on something that they think will work for customers. So let's watch on with interest.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what happens. I think this is again, typically when SAP announces something like this, it's a big drop, and then here's something cool, and then people kind of wait, and then sometimes it fizzles off years later.
Yep.
This one, what they're doing different is they're bringing in partners from across the industry. So that is going to be key why this one might not play out like those other ones have.
Correct.
I think it's going to be successful. We'll see what that means, and we'll see how fast it goes. So I'm excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody, we'll keep our eyes on it and keep you guys posted on any changes that happen in the Rise space or anything else in the SAP world. So that'll do it for us today. Hope everybody has a good rest of your Thursday and a good weekend tomorrow when you get to it. And that'll be it for What's Happening episode 2.
Episode 2.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.